Hello everybody, hello my friends, it's me Mo, and today we are going to be answering the big question, are you black or are you African American? So get comfortable, get a nice chair, don't be like me and sit on the floor, but it's okay, I'm comfortable, it's fine, don't worry about me, worry about you. Get some tea, get yourself comfortable, and let's get on with the video. Before we get started, if you're new, go hit that subscribe button and give the video a thumbs up, it really does help out a lot. I'd like to get to 500 subscribers. It would really mean a lot to me if you subscribe. So let's get on with the video. Before we dive in and try to answer the question, are you black or African American, we first need to talk about the difference between race and ethnicity, because I feel like that's where a lot of the confusion comes from, is because people use these two terms interchangeably when really they are different. So let's first start with race. Race is a social construct, and that has to do with your physical appearance or your phenotype, how you really look versus how other people perceive that you look. And they could be right or wrong about their perceptions. It's just people, I guess your race based off of physical traits like your hair color or your hair texture or your skin color or the shape of your facial features or physical features, that is. So for example, right now you're looking at me, my skin color, I'm dark skinned, and you can't tell because of the braids, but I do have afro textured hair, right? Based off of that, you're gonna say that I'm black, and guess what? You're not wrong, I am black, right? On the other hand, ethnicity, and that has to do more with your culture. You can't really guess somebody's ethnicity based off of how they look. Yeah, you can try and do the best you can and guess, but there's really no way of knowing somebody's ethnicity unless they tell you or they actively talk about it or they actively put it on display. For example, if I wanted you guys to immediately know my ethnicity, maybe I would have my flag hanging somewhere in my room right now and the camera would be able to pick it up, right? Or I probably wouldn't film this video in English and I'd be like, "I nous parle créole," right? With my terrible Haitian accent. We'll get there, you know? But you guys get what I'm trying to say. Your race, people can see, and then your ethnicity isn't always on display unless you want it to be. So now, what does it mean to be African American? That has to do with ancestry. Now, based off my research, I found a quote from Reverend L. Jackson, who was a political civil rights activist, and he said that black is a color. And he emphasized using the term African American because that term shows your heritage and shows your African ancestry rather than just limiting yourself to just black. And African Americans, they're also descendants from people who have been enslaved and brought to the Americas from Africa. Now, I've seen with my black friends who have been living in America for years and years and years, their family's been here for generations and generations and generations, that they don't necessarily know their ancestry. They don't know what country their ancestors came from. And because they can't directly trace back their lineages, they go by African American. Now, on the other hand, I've seen people who were born and raised in America, but their parents immigrated to America from Africa, so from countries like Nigeria or Ghana, and they either identify as Nigerian American, Ghanaian American, or just African American. So based off of my research and interactions with people, that's what it means to be African American. All black people are black, but not all African Americans. Wait.
What?
Okay, so in summary, not every African American, oh my god, not every black person is African American, but every African American is black. I hope that makes sense because I've seen that people who are black British, so they're black but born and raised in the UK, living in England, they sometimes get called African American, and I'm like, bruv, you do know that makes absolutely no sense, right? How are you gonna say that somebody from England is African American? That doesn't make any sense. Y'all thought I was gonna do the accent when I said bruv, right? Yeah, no, I was not about to do y'all dirty like that. I got you. Growing up, I've seen people use the words Black and African American interchangeably, and I've even seen people when in discussion they say the word Black and they're like, oh no, you meant African American. Not that word. It's not Black people, it's African Americans. And I'm like, or wait, even worse, they'll say the word Black and then they'll look to like the nearest Black person just to be like, oh, no offense, I know, like, being Black is so like, no. One time I was on the school bus and this kid, he was telling a story, and I guess he was describing like what the person looked like, and I just happened to be like one seat over, and I was like listening to the story because this was freshman year. I was like trying to make friends with like the people on my bus, and he was like, oh, and they were Black, and he looks at me and he's like, no offense. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean no offense? Like, you just said a color, you just described how somebody looked. They were Black. So being Black is offensive now? I feel like if anything, I'm more offended by them saying no offense before that statement, because by saying no offense, you're implying that being Black is offensive, but it's not. It really isn't. Yeah, so I've noticed a lot of people, especially white people, use the words Black and African American interchangeably because they perceive being Black as a bad thing. And even when I was preparing and like trying to organize my thoughts for this video, I came across a website, right? And they cited the study about people's perceptions of the words Black and African American. And one, I'm reading directly from this website, they said, we found that white Americans perceive the term Black more negatively than African American. We found this in a criminal study, but they also did another study that has to do with employment, and they found that a Black employee was deemed to have a lower status than an African American employee. I feel like people should be able to use either one of the terms that they feel most reflects them and their cultural background, and they shouldn't be penalized in any way for it. This is literally just something that I've noticed. Maybe I'm onto something, maybe I'm not, I don't know. It's just a thought that I have, so I'm gonna share it. I feel like anti-Blackness itself is rooted in the English language, because I noticed that certain words, to give them a negative connotation, they just add the word Black to them, right? But then other words, to give them a more lighthearted and I guess more positive connotation, they add the word white to it. So for example, the White House. Another example would be telling a white lie versus a Black lie. And I'd never heard the term Black lie, but then I googled it and I'm pretty sure it exists. And then another thing, being on a Black list or the Black market. Just, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just feel like language itself has anti-Blackness in it. And I feel like all this anti-Blackness that exists in the world comes from imperialism. Honestly, we're still living in the remnants of imperialism to this very day, so I brought out my notes for this because I tried to do my best to create a timeline. There may be some gaps, some bumps, and maybe not everything lines up, but I did my best to create a timeline of all the different words that we've used in the past. So we first started off using the word Negro, and that term was considered acceptable until around the 1950s when the Civil Rights Movement started. And then we moved on from that to saying colored. And back then it was acceptable to say colored, but say that today, people are going to look at you twice. People are going to double take, because you can't say colored. It's people of color. It's POC. Then after that, we have Black Americans, which was a term that was used for people who had slave ancestors, but they may not necessarily have ties to Africa. And then after that, we have the term Black, which came from the 1960s, from the Black Power movement. And so that is a term that we still use today. But the thing is, you can say Black people, but you can't say Blacks, because then also people are gonna look at you twice. And then lastly, we have the term African American. And so the term African American really came about in the 1980s, and people still use this term today. And like with all these different terms, it just shows like how the times have changed, and like different words have different connotations. So who knows, honestly, maybe one day, maybe like 10, 20, 50 years from now, I'm gonna look back at this video and be like, oh my god, black and African American, how do we use these terms? And we're probably gonna have like a whole other set of different terms to describe people who look like me, people who look like you. So if you made it this far in the video, yay! Thank you for staying with me this long. I'm gonna wrap things up. Just why have this discussion? Why film this video? Why even talk about this? What's the difference? And I think it's good to have discussion because you can learn from people, you can share different ideas. And I had this discussion with my sister and she was like, why would you want to divide the black community even further? And she did bring up a good point, because living in America, people group us all together, right, based off of the color of our skin. And because of that, we share a similar experience, and we all experience discrimination because of this in America. Now, before I continue, I want to clarify, I did say similar experience, similar black experience. Even though we are black, we have different experiences because we have different identities, different religious identities, gender identities. And so because of, I guess, intersectionality, those bring about different sorts of experiences living in America, but for the most part we do share a collective experience in America. People automatically see the color of your skin and they immediately are judging you. They immediately, if they hold any sort of racist beliefs, they're gonna put that onto you, right? They could care less about where your ancestors are from. Like, no Karen's gonna be like, oh well, your descendants, they came from the Caribbean, so you're fine. Like, nobody's gonna say that. Nobody's gonna stop and ask you where your descendants came from, because they could care less in this country, okay? So back to my question, why even have this discussion? Are you trying to divide up the black community? And that's not where I'm coming from. Making this video, I'm coming from a place of instead wanting to celebrate and acknowledge the differences within the black community. Meanwhile, from kindergarten, literally from kindergarten up until college, I've been learning about European history my entire life. I've been dissecting like each country in Europe. Why can't we do the same thing with African countries and Caribbean countries and just other black countries in the world, you know? I think it's really important to acknowledge these histories, acknowledge the differences, and celebrate the differences too. And I'd like to see that done, you know, in history classes in schools. And I'd also like to see that reflected in forms, you know, when I'm just filling out forms for, you know, testing, whatever it is. That's the place where I'm coming from with this video. I'm not coming from a place of wanting to divide and tear apart the black community. That's the last thing I want. That's the last thing I want. I want to celebrate. I want to celebrate each and every one of our differences, because we're all unique people. That's what I want. Period. By the way, don't come for my sister, y'all. She was just sharing her opinion, and I'm here for hearing opinions. So that was it for the video. I hope you guys walked away learning something, but keep in mind, this is just the start of the discussion. So tell me what you thought about the video in the comment section below. Feel free to share this. Give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because 500, that'd be so amazing. 500, wow, we're halfway there then to 1K. That was all for today. Keep clicking back to my channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.